So now I will give the floor to the Admiral and Professor Jayanath Colombage from Sri Lanka. Good evening in Colombo, Professor.
Okay, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. Of course, I am talking to you from Jakarta. So the time here is 2200 in the night. I will focus very little on the SDG aspect, but I will talk about certain aspects of the BRI. But I will talk more related to the national security or overstretching national security, and how does it, I weave the national security, BRI and SDG in my final conclusion. Now, we heard quite a lot about the SDG 2030, but one thing I have to tell, I have to remind ourselves is that, we are only 7 years away from 2030, and I think it's time that we take stocks, that we evaluate the progress that we have achieved during the last so many years from 2015, and see whether we are on track or whether we need to change the course, whether we need any alterations and additions. So because it's only 7 years to go, why I say this is I have a feeling some of the targets may be achieved, but some of the targets may not be achieved at this trend, I mean, at the way right now the things are. Now, we all agree that the world is a very dynamic place, evolving place. Things change very rapidly. And also, if you look at, I think, the last 5 to 7 years, a lot of new things happen in the world. Some of the things that we did not even anticipate would happen. So basically, we can conclude that nothing is permanent, like the religion teaches us, and the interest of countries differ. The national interests differ from the leader to leader, people to people, and the perception of the political parties as well. And not only that, but also the economic conditions and a myriad of other factors impact on the national interest of a country. Why I mention national interest is because we do see many countries, for them, national interest is not development, because either they are developed or they are given up. But for large number of countries, development is their main national interest. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned that last 7 years or so, so many things happened in the world that we did not really foresee coming. If I start with the ISIS, that is the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, it came and it went, but it left a big scar, and things are not very settled yet. And there were a large number of regime change efforts, and some of the countries subjected to this regime change are suffering big time now, and they are unstable, and their economies are in a very bad shape. And of course, we all remember the recent 2 events, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Now, these events that I mentioned has changed the dimension the world was going on. And now, of course, we do see slowing down of many economies, and we do see that disruption to global chains and scarcity of food for many people in the world. And also there are a lot of disruption to air travel. And a few months ago, we saw the prices of oil going up massively, and there were shortages of oil and gas, and the prices going up, and then shortages of wheat, leading to a food crisis in the world. So also we hear, if you look at the last week or so, a number of banks collapsed, number of leading major banks collapsed. Now, this is a very scary feeling. The economists interpret this as the beginning of an international or a worldwide recession. Now, we will be 3 times hit if that happens, because COVID hit us, Ukraine-Russian conflict hit us, and now the economic recession, if it is going to hit us, I don't know where a small economy like Sri Lanka will go. Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, I would come back to Ukraine-Russian conflict briefly from a national security point of view. Now, the West is providing lethal arms, ammunitions, large quantities of weapons, tanks, artillery to the Ukraine to fight. That is, we all know that. right? Now, in my opinion, from what I have studied in conflict resolution, first you have to manage the conflict because there is a conflict. And next, you have to resolve the conflict so that the conflict does not escalate into something bigger. Once you have resolved the conflict, you need to transform that situation into long-lasting peace. But what do we actually see in the Ukraine-Russian conflict? What we see is the West is adding fuel to fire. They just keep on pumping munition so that people will get.
Professor, let's come back to BRI and this sustainable development. We are not talking about the Russian war. Okay,
No. I just want to link this to the national security. That's why I went on that tangent. I am coming back. What I'm trying to say is the national interests of various countries differ. And my point is development should be at the center of everything that most of the countries are so worried about, because the BRI to me is development. So I'm sorry, that is why I wanted to bring this issue, because national security for some is great, but many countries like Sri Lanka, the development matters a lot. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, there are many questions that we can ask from this world. What is happening? Is development a key issue for the developed countries, or they want to overstretch national security, put everything under one blanket and prevent BRI going ahead with the progress? This is the question that I think we need to ask. That is why I really wanted to bring these issues. Now, okay, now I'm coming to the BRI proper. Now, BRI, when it was started or when it was launched in 2013, we all know that, like now, of course, now it's about 151 countries. Now, Sri Lanka became a member of the BRI in 2014. So to me, BRI is a way of developing infrastructure, especially maritime related infrastructure for a developing country like Sri Lanka. And at that time, in the year 2013, there was no other collective development project for the world. There was no other collective development project for the entire world when the BRI was launched. And that is why I guess many countries across the globe joined or bandwagon or came on board BRI, so that they wanted to progress their countries, they wanted to progress their economies, they wanted to develop their countries through the BRI. And we all know the BRI had a shared vision, a community of shared vision for shared prosperity, we all see. But what do we actually see today? Many countries, many developed countries, they play the national security card and they block the progress of BRI. They block the progress of BRI. Now, few arguments they bring in to prevent the progress of BRI. And number one, of course, is national security. I will talk about that a little later as well. But another very common thing that they talk about is debt trap diplomacy or predator economic policies of China. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and incidentally, Sri Lanka is cited as a classic example of Chinese debt trap diplomacy. But let me tell you figuratively, out of total external debt of Sri Lanka, less than 9% is to China. Out of all total external debt of Sri Lanka, less than 9% we owe to China. So where is the debt trap diplomacy? It is something wrong with Sri Lankan way we have governed our country, way we have handled our economy. That is our problem. Basically, it is not the loans that we have taken, but it is basically selling international sovereign bonds at a shorter maturity rate and with high interest for various needs. Now we are saddled with that. So debt. Now, of course, we are going to the IMF to get an IMF bailout package, and China, Japan, India, and the Paris Club has agreed to undergo debt moratorium, haircut, or debt restructuring, whatever we like to call it. So that is happening. So what I'm trying to say is, one argument the West is always bringing against BRI is that it is leading to debt trap diplomacy or predator economic, which is not the case in Sri Lanka, although Sri Lanka is cited as the perfect example, together with other countries. Even Pakistan is cited as a perfect example through the CPEC. Right now, this is the problem, but many projects taking place in Sri Lanka under the BRI is now functioning, bringing in economic prosperity, bringing in money, bringing in investment to the country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we always hear that BRI is predator economics, and they are trying to hamper the sovereignty of other countries, and they are trying to have national security implications of other country. But when you criticize something, you have to come up with an alternative. But where is that alternative for a large number of developing countries, right? But BRI came out with a concept, and not only a concept, the financial capacity, financial package to implement that concept. Now, we do hear a few things coming up, like Global Gateway from Europe, Global Britain from UK, and some other Bay of Bengal initiative, and a host of MCC projects from America. But where is the funding? Any major project, unless you have funding, nothing can happen. So this is the second point that I want to bring. BRI came with a package in the package for economics as well. So therefore, now we heard a lot about SDGs. To me, BRI is complementary to SDG, because SDG has 17 sectors, including human rights. BRI is also part of that. If we can develop our economies, if we can uplift the people from poverty, if we can provide them their basic needs, then we are meeting the SDG 2030. This is my argument. Right. So therefore, what we need, the world need, is a collective response. Individually, it's very difficult for a small country to survive. We need a collective response. We need to build resilience for the smaller economies, and we need to implement certain systems and promote investment. Many countries don't want grants, they don't want loans, they want investment, but the investment is not coming. Making the free markets economy is not happening. True economic globalization is not happening. So then finally, I will come to the overstretch in national security. We hear every day which large developed countries always take national security issue. National security, therefore we go and invade Iraq. National security, we go and invade Afghanistan. National security, we want the regime change. So this is happening. So this is, I think, overstretching national security, because we all agree national security is no longer the hard military security. It is comprehensive security. There are so many areas, right? Now, anything can be converted, anything can be perceived, anything can be argued as national security, even technology, right? You will say, oh, this equipment can be used for spicing, therefore we must ban it. This social media platform can be used for propaganda against us, therefore national security implication, therefore we must ban it. So this is what I meant by overstretching national security. So this is not the right thing to do, because not only they are overstretching national security, unfortunately, in the world, we see this argument, you are either with us or against us. You are either with us or against us. Now we are talking about a democracy summit, which is coming very soon. Now, this is again a way of dividing the world into camps, which we don't want. We don't want to belong to any camp. We want basic development. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming to the end of my time as well. So therefore, I will conclude that we need SDG 2030 is a great concept. We need to achieve them. BRI is also a great concept with financial package, and these two are complementary to each other. So basically, when you talk about human needs, human security, human rights, human development, economies, the BRI can provide the world with that. And therefore, we must not look at BRI with suspicion, but on the contrary, we must look at BRI as complementary to SDG 2030, and then work towards a comprehensive, collective, collaborative effort. The time is running out. We need international synergy. We need cooperation. We need understanding to implement a human development plan like BRI at the global level. So with this, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you there, Admiral and Professor. Thank you very much for your intervention.